My testimony, I wanted to start off with reading from Ephesians, if you guys don't mind. It's Ephesians 2, and I want to just share it because it's so relevant to me and to all of us. So I'm going to just read it real quick. It says, "And you he made alive who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who right now is at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once conducted ourselves in the lusts of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just like everyone else. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, he made us alive together with Christ, and raised us up together, and made us sit together in the heavenly places in Christ, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace in his kindness towards us in Jesus Christ. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that is not of yourself, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." And I share that because in my life, I grew up, I kind of had it made, sort of, but not really. I came from a family that was severely disrupted by alcohol and drugs from my youngest age. I think I took my first drink when I don't even have a conscious memory of my first drink. My mom told me a story when I was 2 years old, and I actually blacked out. They had to call the ambulance, and from drinking alcohol. When the ambulance showed up, they were like, "Okay, he's drunk." And so I have no recollection of that story, but I was basically born into alcoholism and drug addiction. By the age of 10 years old, my parents were divorced, and I was doing marijuana on a daily basis, drinking every weekend, cutting school, and surfing all day. I grew up in Hawaii, so surfing is a big part of my life. I grew up surfing with the people who are today making millions of dollars from surfing, and basically drugs, the drug life took me in the wrong direction. It just basically stripped me of the career that I coulda, shoulda, woulda had. But I made decisions based on self that took me down a road. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no leadership in my life. My dad was gone. My dad did try to, intercede at times, but my dad didn't have a dad, so he was just kind of like, doing the best he could. And I basically was just doing drugs. I ended up going into my first treatment. My actual first treatment, I was 13 years old, and then as an adult, I started going into treatments at the age of 19, and by the age of 27, I ended up going to prison. And in prison, that's where I actually got saved. So I got saved in prison. I started to attend chapel services in there. I started reading the Bible. That was a big part of it. I got saved with an inmate who kind of basically was like, "Okay, now read the Bible and read the New Testament." And I kind of just followed his, it was just crazy because I was obedient to that. I just read the Bible for the first time in my life when I was in prison. And when I did that, it was pretty amazing to me to find out that all the things I thought about, Christians was completely different from what it was. When the Bible talks about guys like Paul who were converted before his name was Saul, and he was a person who was like killing Christians and, having them arrested and things like that. And then even in the story of David, when he committed adultery and murder, things like that. I mean, when I read those things, it really gave me a lot of a different perspective on what walking with God was really all about. But part of my, when I came out of prison so many years later, I ended up in Teen Challenge in Hawaii. was in 2007, and I went through Teen Challenge for a year. I was trying to avoid my second felony conviction on probation, so I went into this ministry based on the decision that I didn't want to go to any more secular treatments because I had been to so many that I felt like I was getting pulled in a different direction to learn about the Lord under leadership. So I went, and at the time I was facing the Big Island Drug Court, and then after I went through Teen Challenge, like maybe 5 years later, it was just amazing because what God was able to perform in my life as a result of going through there was I got married. I ended up working in treatment at a Lokahi treatment centers on the Big Island of Hawaii. And I was an outpatient substance abuse counselor. I was married. I had my wife and my daughter. I was serving in my church. I was a pastor's assistant. I was doing men's ministry, youth outreach, and I just was fully involved with a life I've never known before as a direct result of Teen Challenge. And as we live life, we're doing the best we can. But I think my biggest mistake was when I wanted to step down because I was so enthralled with all the things I was doing in ministry. It was a little bit overwhelming, and trying to work and just trying to do everything I was doing. So I made this decision that I was going to step down, and I did that, and my whole life just fell apart over time. I mean, literally, me and my wife ended up getting separated back in like 2015. We've been separated since, and I was actually we were supposed to get divorced, but we just never got divorced yet. And during the time of our separation, I just went through like a major crisis, and I went from being like just destroyed. I mean, I went back to using drugs and everything. I was doing drugs, and I was trying at different points to get it back together, and I did. The Lord actually helped me through Alcoholics Anonymous to like start kind of rebuilding again, and I got a really good job. I was driving a 44-passenger bus for a company named Iruka Hawaii. It was a dolphin tour company, and it was pretty much like the highlight of my life at that point, after everything falling apart and then getting back to a point of just enjoying life again. It was really a big deal because the job that I had allowed me to basically just pick up people in Waikiki, drive them to the other side of the island and get them safely onto the boat where they would swim with dolphins out in the wild. And they would sometimes take up to 5 hours to the whole tour. So during that whole time, I was allowed to just go surfing or do whatever I wanted. And I mean, it was just the greatest job I ever had. And I'm an expert level surfer, so I would just surf all day and get paid for it, and so it really was great. But the thing about it is, why I want to emphasize that is because even though that was happening for me, deep down inside, there was something really missing, like I wasn't really happy. Like if I could have gave up that to go back and be with my wife at the church, I would have, but it wasn't possible. And a bunch of things happened, and I ended up going back on drugs. And once I got on drugs, I quit. I didn't go to work. I quit my job, and in that process, I spiraled down into just a major psychosis and depression. And someone had told me, because my sister lived out here in Washington in Linwood, so I don't know how I heard it, but someone told me that drugs were legal in Seattle. So I was like, I called my sister, and my sister was like, yeah, you can come up here, but if you're going to use drugs, I'm going to kick you out. And so I took her up on the offer, and she kicked me out. And she kicked me out. 2 weeks. I was up here for 2 weeks, and I was on the streets, and I knew nobody here. And so it was just the craziest experience. But I ended up getting housing in downtown Seattle after about a year of being here. And I ended up in a place called the Fry Hotel. And it was just, at first it was like a blessing, but once I started using over there, it turned into a grave. And I was there for about 5 months, and I was literally the worst I've ever been in my life. Like I was stuck. And I would literally at times, I mean, I would just stay in this apartment all day and sometimes just be staring at the walls high. I was sticking needles in my arms, and, I just was just dead. That's why I wanted to read Ephesians 2, is because when it talks about being dead, it's an important aspect of where I'm at today, because I couldn't have really, when I went through Teen Challenges back in 2007, it really was the hardest thing I've ever done. Teen Challenge is such a great ministry. They provide everything. You get to meet people, beautiful people like all of you sitting here, and like life just gets good. And the thing is going through this ministry is not easy. It requires commitment, and it requires, just rising up to a different level. And so I never thought I would go through Teen Challenge again, but my life was so dead when I was in that apartment. I mean, it got really, really bad for me. And when I finally reached a place of desperation, like I don't really know how it all happened, but something came into my mind that said to call Teen Challenge. And so that's what I did. And like the very next day, I made one phone call. Soren happened to answer the phone, the guy who was on the stage here before me, and he picked me up the very next day. And ever since then, I've just been, recommitted. I walked into Teen Challenge and I heard the Lord tell me, it's been 8 years since me and my wife have been separated. And during that time I was living in that Fry Hotel, I hadn't spoken to my wife for 5 months. And when I came in through the doors, I heard the Lord tell me when I was reading the Word that He was for my marriage, and that I needed to just submit to Him in obedience. That's what I heard from Him. And that's what I've been doing, and just trying to rise up to a different level, to be the man that God has called me to be. I've actually been running from my whole life. But the most important aspect of that was the time that I spent in that one-bedroom apartment by myself. I mean, everything I go through at Teen Challenge, I always have to remember that, because it was so hard there, but yet I put myself through that. And I did that because I was serving an enemy that I wasn't really trying to pay attention to. And, God pulled me out of that, and He rescued me from that. And He put me into a position where the light has just been shining in my life and allowing me to just grow in grace and love. It's just incredible where I'm at today. I mean, I'm working on my 5th month. I've been in there now for 155 days. And what God is doing in my life through this ministry, through the brothers, through the leadership, and through people like you, is just rising me up to a level of love. I mean, supernatural culture, okay? I want to say it like that. We're my man, supernatural culture. I mean, it really is incredible, and I'm getting chicken skin right now because one of our guys here, he walks around talking about that supernatural culture, bro, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm working in the day, and I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, bro, this is just an upside-down kingdom. We are doing things totally against the grain of the world. You know what I mean? When most people are getting mad or wanting to retaliate, God is telling us, bro, love this brother. Learn how to love him. And it's just like, I don't know how to do that. That's my struggle. You know what I mean? That's really my struggle. And that's what God is calling all of us to. And, when we were up here on the stage too, man, I was like thinking like we sound funny and this and that or whatever. But I was just like, God hears our hearts, and God is happy with every single person here. God looks at us and He just is thrilled that we're making the choice to be, a part of His kingdom. And so in closing, I just want to read real quick one more scripture. It's from, okay, I lost it here. It's actually in, John. So in John 12, verse 24, it says, most assuredly, this is John 12:24. It says, most assuredly I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. He who loves his life will lose it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal. If anyone serves me, let him follow me, and where I am, there my servant will be also. If anyone serves me, him my Father will honor. And I wanted to read that as well, just to kind of like, talk about that dying and living. It's just really a crazy concept, but that's what it is. Like I have to die and die to the flesh. And through that, God gives us life, and he takes us to just this whole new level of something that we don't even, I don't even know nothing about it. But as I stay committed and, willing to work through the difficulties with, and it's a brotherhood that we have. The thing about Teen Challenge, man, is it's not like a me thing. It's like I don't do it, but I do it with a bunch of guys. Everything we do together. And it's like the reason why it's so hard is because when it gets hard, you can't run. There's nowhere to run, And so it's either you be willing to change to get better, or you're just going to get bitter and you're not going to make it. There's no middle of the road with that. And so as I've continued to just, follow up with this commitment and have the support of people like you who are pouring into our ministry, and I want to say thank you for that, and just that God is just doing an amazing thing. And I'm excited for the new people who are getting baptized today, and for those of you who are new. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for letting me share. One more thing I want to just talk about real quick too, because my guy was supposed to tell me when my 6 minutes were up, but he never did it. So I'm still going no tomorrow, but it's okay. The thing I wanted to say is that since, 155 days, that's really not much at all. But to me, it's been a big deal that I've never mentioned anything about my marriage to my wife. But I just wanted to talk about that because I just feel like God is really continuing to show me signs of his faithfulness in my commitment towards obedience. And I just believe, and that me and my wife, in the short conversations that we have had over the phone, it's just been incredibly good. And there's been no sour conversations or angry conversations. Just the Lord is doing a work. And so as we continue to focus on the answer, which is Jesus Christ, he will continue to just give us the light to shine in our hearts and our lives, to be reunited with our loved ones, and to give us a life at the level that he's called us to. So